For 2,000 years, people have been taught that Eve ate an apple. And of late, people are coming up with this revelation that Eve never ate an apple, but she actually had sex with Lucifer. Today, I want to debunk all those two claims because they are not scriptural based. Before I go deep into it, into the correct revelation backed by the scriptures and the notable prophets, I'm going to give you an overview of what led to this event which happened in the Garden of Eden. After God had created Adam, the spirit man, he then went on to create a body for Adam. And when God gave a breath of life to this Adam, the Bible says Adam became a living soul. And that living soul was a triune being, having the spirit, the soul, and the body. And the Bible goes on to say, out of the body of Adam, God took a rib and he created Eve, the wife. I want you to notice this. When God gave out the first commandment, it was only given out to Adam when he was still alone. And the commandment was, of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but the tree of knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat. So one tree was forbidden, but every other tree was allowed to be partaken by Adam. But after a process of time, God caused Adam to fall in a deep sleep. Then out of his side, God took out a rib as portrayed in the Bible, and out of that rib he created Eve. And when Adam woke up after that deep sleep, he saw Eve standing before him, and he proclaimed and said, "This is bone of my bone." And he called him a woman because he said, because she was taken from my side, she shall be called a woman. And this woman was never given a commandment by God himself. But Adam, as her prophet, he relayed the commandments to her. And he told her that of every tree of the Garden of Eden, they were supposed to freely eat, except the tree which is also in the middle of the garden, a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But I want you to notice, in the Garden of Eden, we didn't have Adam and Eve and the trees only. We had also animals. And amongst those animals was an animal which was called the serpent. The serpent was a real animal which was walking on toes like a man. I want you to notice, because this is very, very important. This is the fact that is going to dispel all confusion. The serpent was not an animal which was walking on four. Neither was it crawling like a snake. And another fact, the Bible says he was more subtle than any other animal of the land. In other words, the serpent was the closest to a human being. And that was the missing link between a human being and a chimpanzee. Walking on twos, speaking like a human being, and it had all the traits of a human being. The only difference between the serpent and a human being was that it was an animal, and as we know that animals does not have souls. The other thing which was in the Garden of Eden was Lucifer himself, now called Satan, a fallen angel. And we know that an angel is a spirit and can never have physical contact with human beings. So that the idea of Lucifer, Satan having sex with Eve is outright out of the way. An angel can never have intercourse with a human being because one is spiritual and the second is natural. But what really happened in the Garden of Eden is that the serpent was anointed by the devil, and it persuaded Eve to partake one of the fruits of the tree of knowledge. And we know that these trees are symbolic though. For us to understand what is the fruit of the tree of knowledge, we go to Galatians chapter 5. Paul, the Bible expositor, reveals two kinds of spirits, and these spirits, they do represent what was happening in the Garden of Eden. Remember, the tree of life was representing Jesus Christ, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was representing Lucifer, Satan. Jesus being the Spirit of God, and Satan representing an evil spirit. Now Galatians chapter 5 verse 19, he says, "Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, and lasciviousness." And he went on to list the rest of the things, but I want to draw your attention to this point. The four things that he has mentioned are the most deadliest things that is affecting humanity today. And all these four has got to do with sexuality and intimacy, which is right when it's done in the proper way. Then from verse 22, he outlines the fruit of the Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, and long-suffering, and so forth and so forth. But I want you to notice this thing. On verse 23, he says, meekness, temperance, against such there is no law. So he's now back in the Garden of Eden. Because in the Garden of Eden, there was a law which was given. Adam was forbidden to partake any of the fruit of that tree of knowledge of good and evil, from the most dangerous fruit to the most innocent fruit. But there was no law pertaining to the fruit of the tree of life. This is what Paul is revealing. In other words, when the Bible says Eve ate one of the fruit of that forbidden tree, she actually had an act, not with Lucifer, not with the husband, Adam, but with the serpent. Because the serpent was next to a human being. Like, share, and subscribe.